the people that we come across. So, in the 10th chapter, we find that Sri Krishna is explaining a preliminary technique, you can say. It's a technique which precedes the real deeper aspects of meditation. So, if people are not very capable of entering a state where they can meditate spontaneously or effortlessly, then they have to resort to other things because their minds are so much engrossed in the world around them that this is a kind of preliminary technique. In Hindi, they call it as Purva Tayyari, means you are not yet ready for meditation. You are creating an atmosphere where which is conducive to meditation. So you train your mind. So that can be explained that way. And Sri Krishna is saying that all these 38 verses is giving examples of how even amongst nature, there are so many things around us, so many species of living as well as there are so many non-living inanimate objects around us. And we can use those to fine-tune our mind to get into that meditative state. So how do we do it? So we try to see that which is excellent, because the Lord says that I am manifest everywhere, in the good and the bad. Everywhere you see the same Lord, the all-pervading Lord. But we cannot grasp that all-pervading Lord. When you say that even in the wicked the Lord exists, it may be good as a theory, but in practice, when it comes to the practical application of this idea, how can I see the Lord who is present in the evil person? So, or evil things that we see around us. Though he is the creator, according to Vedanta, he is the creator. I'll just have to. Yeah. Yeah, I disabled because people can unmute themselves. That was enabled. So I disabled it so that now nobody can unmute themselves. I'll allow that once the class is over. And if you want to ask some questions, I'll unmute them. Now I muted everybody and we have not enabled the facility to mute. So anyway, the Lord here now says that all these examples that I gave to see my glory, a fraction of my glory in the creation that I have created. Lord is the creator, he is the preserver, and he is also the destroyer. We should remember that. And that he will show in the next chapter, the 11th chapter, where he shows Arjuna, by giving him divine insight, the things that are going to happen, the horrible things that are going to happen in the war, innumerable people will be killed. So it's part of that cosmic play, divine play. But when we meditate, he's saying, you take up each of the species that I have created and try to find out what is where my manifestation is the maximum. In some, like for example, in animals, it may be the lion. Though all animals are partially or fully, not fully, but to some extent manifestations of the Lord. But the manifestation is seen more in some particular species or some particular species in in Prakriti. So is the case with all the trees. So till now he says these are some samples which I am giving you where you can get an idea of my supreme glory, though this is a partial glory. So then he says in verse number 39, he concludes all the examples that he gave, the first 38 which we discussed. Each verse we discussed in great detail, but now he summarizes everything and says about his glory in general, not in particular species. Like you used to say that among the steady things that you see in the universe, I am the Himalayas. Because Himalayas are so massive, they're so huge that when you compare it with other mountains, they are supreme. So you try to see the glory in the Himalayas. You just don't be satisfied by seeing the hills and the smaller mountains. You go to the best in that particular species or that particular object that Sri Krishna has chosen. So he just gives only 38 in the 38 verses. He gives several examples he has given, and he tells us to meditate on, to get a glimpse of that glory of the Lord. It's not the full glory that he's describing, but now he's going deeper. He says, Yat cha api sarva bhutanam bijam tad aham arjuna na tadasti vina yat syan maya bhutam characharam. So this is a verse which summarizes what he has told in the first 38 verses. Yat, that which, and also resides among all beings. There's something which is there all pervading. Sarva bhutanam. Bhuta means whatever exists. It's not necessarily living beings, it can be non-living things also. Among all the things, among all the created things. Bhuta means to be. To be means to be created. So among all the creation, among all the beings in creation, I am the seed. So he's now slowly taking us on a journey where we go from the gross to the subtle. Our spiritual journey is nothing but going from the material or the gross, trying to find out, just as a scientist, he is keen to understand the phenomena around him. So what does he do? He tries to find out the subtle forces which influence matter, and he wants to handle or control that matter. So that's how he discovered electricity, he discovered the uses of heat energy, light energy, so many uses, how to control the forces which control matter. That is what he did. And in biological sciences, he is trying to control the prana or the life forces using medicine, using other surgery and other techniques, trying to find out how best we can control the bodily functions. And when we do it successfully, we say we have cured a person or we are making that person healthy. So also, he says, among all the beings, I am the seed. But beyond that, beyond the control of the forces that are responsible for the atoms, for the molecules, for the materials, for even the biological beings, the cells, the living cells, behind them there is some kind of subtle energy. But even beyond that, how did this creation come about? There is some cause behind everything that is created. Nothing can be caused, we can't see any effect without a cause being behind that. When we see a fire, we know somebody has caused that fire. Something was done which caused this fire. So that is technically known as bijam. Bijam means the seed. So I am the seed. When you see the tree, you know that there was a seed. Because of that seed, the tree has come. So when you say seed, that means the cause of everything. So I am the cause. So he is giving the example of a seed. Among all beings, I am the seed. Tat aham Arjuna, he is telling Arjuna, there is nothing. Na tadasti vinat yatsyan maya bhutam sacharacharam. Means there is nothing which can exist without me being all pervaded. Maya, it is, I am pervading. Characharam means moving or unmoving. Chara means that which moves. Acharam means that which does not move. Means living and non-living. To put it in a very simple English language, it means moving or unmoving. So whatever you see among the moving or the unmoving things, whatever is the seed of all beings, that am I, the Supreme Lord. And there is no being, whether it is moving or unmoving, whether it is living or non-living, that can exist without me. So I am the substratum. I am the support of all these beings. So it may be summed up as that at different varieties, levels of existence, We exist in different levels. As I told you, uh, Vedanta says we exist in five broad levels. They have classified, there are many classifications. You may say there are three levels according to one theory. Not theory, one explanation. Sthula, Sukshma and Karana. That is the gross, Sthula, the gross things that we perceive around us. Then we have the Sukshma, that is the subtle, which is behind the gross, which is manipulating the gross. And then we have the causal, the seed. That is what this seed is all about. So whatever happens to us or whatever happens to any of the created things has a subtle thing which is known as the cause. So that ultimate cause, the all at all. So that is one way of classifying. There is another way of classifying, fivefold classification, which begins in Annamaya Kosha. When I am talking of living beings, first there is Annamaya Kosha, the physical body. Then there is Pranamaya Kosha, which is the subtle body, the subtle forces, the forces that beat our heart, the lungs, the circulation and everything. Then behind that is the mind, the mental existence, the reactive mind, the instinctive mind, and even beyond that, more subtle than that, is the discriminative mind, which is known as Vijnanamaya Kosha. So Annamaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha, which is a reactive mind, which is a very crude type of mind which we share with other animals. And there is a higher mind where we have the power to make choices, to decide what is good, what is bad. That is the privilege of only human beings. Animals, they are mostly instinctive. Of course, some animals can be, they are very intelligent, but human beings are supposed to be more discriminative. They can distinguish between good and bad. So that is known as Vijnanamaya Kosha. But beyond that, all our karma is stored in a level of existence which is known as Anandamaya Kosha, which is the innermost, the causal body. So when you say Sthula, Sukshma and Karana Sharira, the Anandamaya Kosha is where the innermost existence, where all our past karma is as it were stored. And we are born because of that. Whatever we do in life is because of that. Of course, we can change. We can change the fruits of our past karma. That much freedom God has given us. We have a independent will which can make us unmake or undo what we have done in the past. Whatever we want to undo, there is a scope in this life. So you can undo that, change the causes so that the effect is not felt. So, but all of them depend on Brahman. They have all their source in Brahman. Whether you take the Sthula, Sukshma or Karana, at all levels, or whether you are a moving or a living being or a unliving or a non-living thing, all have their substratum or source in Brahman. So Brahman is the existence, the pure consciousness, and whatever that you see, the Sri Krishna is saying that all the attributes that you see, the good, bad, evil, whatever is going on, they are because of Prakriti, the ever-changing Prakriti. So he says, in the next verse we'll see, he just continues. He's just explaining this verse further in verse number 40. Na anta asti, nantosti mama divyanam vibhutinam parantapa एषः तु उद्देशतः प्रोक्तो विभूते विस्तरः मया. I mean, there is no end to my divine, na anta asti. There is no end to my divine manifestation. I just give you a sample, these 38 verses, and then the 39th verse, I explained what is the nature of reality. But that is just a sample. You cannot possibly understand the full glory of the Lord. So there's no end, because it's endless. There is no end of my divine manifestations. This is only a brief exposition by me of the extent of my glories. So Eshaha tu uddeshata prokto vibhute vistar. I will, the glories are so numerous that I just give you a small glimpse, a sort of trailer of the total reality that I am. And because your mind has only this capacity to understand. So I'm just giving you a sample. So now the question may arise, what has caused this universe? So if you see how a mother hen puts some chickens, small chicks, by helping themselves to grains of food, she will spoon feed or maybe directly feed the children. But later on she feels that now the chick has to grow up. And in the process of growing, they have to help themselves. At the most, she will give some grains of food in front of the chicken. But the eating has to be done by the chickens themselves. The young ones have to catch the process and continue to feed themselves. Likewise, Sri Krishna is just giving us a few samples. We are novices in this path to spirituality. So Sri Krishna says, I'm just giving you some hints, but the journey has to be undertaken by yourself. I can't do it for you. So God has given us the free will to do or to be or not to be. That is the famous Shakespearean dialogue. Hamlet was confused. There's a beautiful, he is asking his friend, the purpose of life, to be or not to be. Not to be means he was all contemplating suicide. He said, what is the purpose of living? Because there was so much misery in his life. But at the same time, he was afraid that not to be, that means after death, I'm not sure what will happen to me. So even that is uncertain. To be is also uncertain. So my problem is that I want to exist, but I don't know whether it is a good state to be or not to be. So it's a deep philosophical question. So the Lord here is pointing out the exact reason why we live in this world. It's neither to be nor to not to be. In the sense, as Hamlet has that confusion in Shakespearean drama, that if I die, will the situation be better than what I am facing right now? So this kind of uncertainty comes in everybody's life. They don't know the purpose of life, nor do they know the purpose of death. In America, when somebody asked Swami Vivekananda, your philosophy harps too much on death. What is the fun? You, as long as you are alive, just make fun. Enjoy the life that has been given to you. Anyway, it is going to end, so why do you bother so much? Your philosophy, we don't understand. It does not emphasize how to live. It's harping so much. May not be fully, but it is harping so much on death and beyond. But as everybody knows, Swamiji then immediately replied. He said, if you don't know what happens after death, or what are the consequences of death, what is the future after death, then how can you live? You'll always be fearful of that uncertainty of death. Why should you live? Why should you live with so much of fear? You are living, no doubt, but all the time, if that fear of death is pestering you, is making you anxious, even while you are now and then, some people, they get a glimpse. They try to think, if they are permitted. Sometimes their schedules are so busy that they don't even have time to think about death. Nachiketa was very lucky, because in the Upanishad he goes to the king of death. He wants to know what death really is, what happens. He says, I'm not going to lead this life without knowing what is going to happen to me after death. So it's not that we don't want to know. We just try to push it, postpone it. He said, okay, later on we'll think. Let us now deal with life. But Vedanta, according to Swamiji, says, Hinduism or Vedanta teaches you not only to live but how to die properly. That doesn't mean that one has to commit suicide, but the idea is if one is prepared, one knows the consequence, what happens after death, whether the soul will continue to exist or not. These are questions that you cannot wish away. We have to answer that. And when you answer that, every religion, in fact, which talked of the spirit, was motivated by this quest that what happens after death? Is everything going to end? Then why am I earning all this money if I have to leave everything behind? What is the purpose of my life? So the most of the answers to this question, they are expressed in different religions in different ways. The Bible expresses it in one way, Krishna expresses it in one way, but the essence is same. The answer to the question that is the soul or is our life eternal? If there is an eternal life, how do I reach it? So whether you call it the spirit or the Atman or Brahman or the consciousness, the purpose of life, now slowly Sri Krishna will come to that, is the recognition of the divinity underlying all is pointed out here. He says, this is a brief exposition. Don't go too much deep into all my glories. They may be glories for you. I have explained those to you because you will understand that. But the main glory is to recognize my essential divinity. So the sadhaka, one who does a spiritual aspirant, he has to come to a state, by seeing the glories in the manifest, he has to come to a state where he pursues the spiritual path, and the act of seeking God, which he is trying to seek him. He is trying to seek him in the Himalayas, he is trying to seek him in all the wonderful examples, the glories were expressed. Then he found that, oh no, this is a partial glory. I want to know the full glory of the Lord. So that evolves, and slowly in verse number 41 we'll come to that. But before that, Sri Ramakrishna used to tell the same thing in the gospel in a very nice way. He says, who can know this Ishvara or God in his entirety? I mean, that is what Sri Krishna is also saying, that I have just given you a glimpse. That is not the real me. You will, with the help of these verses, you can start your journey towards me, but that is not the real, the truth behind the Lord. I mean, truth behind reality that you are seeking. So Sri Ramakrishna, in his own very simple way, in the gospel, he says, who can know Ishvara in entirety, in his entirety? Partially you can get a glimpse, but not fully. That power and privilege are not given to us. Again, it is not necessary that we have to know his infinitude. This is something new he is telling in a new way. As our understanding permits, it is enough if we know him alone to be real. We don't have to know all the aspects. That is the idea behind this chapter, 10th chapter. Let it be supposed. Now he gives a beautiful example. You see, Sri Ramakrishna's explanations in the gospel, they are so deep and so powerful that what is explained in so many verses, he explains in one small teaching or paragraph or a parable. That is how the great prophets taught. They taught through simple stories. If you see, Buddha taught through parables, Christ taught through parables. Many of the Vedas, they're all stories. They give us examples of the, and which reveals the truth behind the spiritual truths which we are seeking. So he says, suppose you want to know God, it is like, suppose one has to experience or one wants to see the Ganga and have a holy dip in it. Now, he says, if you go from Gangotri to Gangasagar is the place where Ganga enters the sea, but it starts at the source, Gangotri. So that is from the source to the Gangasagar, that is the place where it enters the sea. The river ends there. One need not take a dip in every meter of the Ganga. You don't have to contact the river at every point. Anywhere, any sacred spot which is convenient to you, if you dip from Gangotri to Ganga Sagar, it's as good as taking a dip in the Ganga. So you see how a subtle truth, which is explained by this verse number 40 by Sri Krishna. Sri Ramakrishna gives a beautiful example that you want to know, then take a dip in the Ganga, then you don't have to, you can take it at the source, Gangotri. You don't have to take a dip at every point in the Ganga. It is enough if the purpose is served if you take a dip anywhere. So similarly, he says, what's the need to know his infinite glory? You can possibly never know it. Our mind can never know it. But these are pointers given by Sri Krishna to touch the infinitude or touch the infinite Brahman. So though we cannot possibly, it's not possible for the human mind to see the glory behind the Lord, but he can aspire, or that is the goal of sadhana, to touch the Lord anywhere. And then touching the Lord, it's like touching the Ganga or experiencing Ganga from Gangotri to Ganga Sagar, any point. So this verse, this I just gave a example from the gospel, but we'll come to the next verse. Then he says, how does this knower of God, suppose somebody experiences Brahman by a result of with the help of sadhana, he realizes God. He knows God, I mean, in essence, he realizes. Then how does he view the world? Does the world have any significance for him? If he has touched the infinite, why does he have to know all these glories of the Lord? So that this confusion does not arise, the essence of these vibhutis, this is known as Vibhuti Yoga. Each chapter of Gita is a yoga. It's a way or means to connect with the Lord somehow. In the first chapter, if you see, you connected with the Lord through depression. The first was Vishada Yoga. You may argue, how can depression lead to contact with the Lord? In fact, you see that is what happened in the first chapter. Arjuna suddenly got fearful. He did not want to fight the war. He got in such a miserable state, such a powerful person. All of a sudden, he's asking Sri Krishna, now I don't know, I'm totally confused. So even that, the first chapter says even Vishada can lead to yoga. And that inspired him to know the purpose of life. So sometimes pain teaches us more than pleasure. As Swamiji says, all through my life, whenever I've suffered, I've understood or thought of the Lord more, or tried to understand the reality more. If I had not come across pain, if I had not come across all these troubles, then I would not have been bothered. I would have just enjoyed my life. So sometimes even Vishada leads to yoga. So also all the chapters which we discussed now, this is the 10th chapter. This is a chapter where you understand the essence of the vibhutis, the glories of the Lord. So whatever you see outside of you, glories, don't get carried away by that, but use it as a meditation technique. So what is the essence of these vibhutis? We'll understand, is discussed in verse number 41 and 42. Now this verse I'll briefly discuss. Yat yat vibhuti mat sattvam Srimat urjitam evacha vevava urjitam evava tat tat eva avagachatvam mama tejah anshasam bhavam. Now what does it mean? The whole translation of this in brief is, whatever you see, the vibhutis that you see, yat yat, whatever vibhuti mat sattvam, whatever vibhutis are existing in this creation, whatever beings that you see, whatever is that is glorious, prosperous or powerful, know that to have sprung from a spark of my splendor. It's just a spark of my total glory. Don't be carried away, but definitely I am there. So that is why Sri Ramakrishna, somebody asked Sri Ramakrishna, whenever he heard that there is a great musician or a great scholar Like a child, he would say, please tell his nephew Hriday, please take me to that person. So he used to ask, what will you gain? He says, no, wherever there is glory, the Gita says that wherever there is glory, we have to learn to respect it. There's a powerful, that is why that is the purpose of Vibhuti Yoga. So we have to learn to appreciate. It's a spark, it's not the full glory, but still it will help you to understand the full glory. So it's like a sun, it spreads everywhere. Sometimes you feel the sun reflected. If there is a transparent glass, you'll feel bright. If it's a black thing which is lying, the sun is not reflected. But at the same time, you see that the sun's rays are spread equally everywhere. But in some places, you see the true reflection. That is the glory. So that is how Sri Krishna is saying the revealing light which reveals different objects are different. And what reveals the objects that we see is different than the thing that is revealing. The sun himself is different. The light is something which reveals. The consciousness that is revealed in different ways through these through the glorious creation of the Lord. They may vary. Some are more glorious, some are less glorious. Just as the sun rays are not spread equally everywhere. In some of them they reflect more, some of them reflect less. But God is self-revealed. Sun is glorious. Sun's glory will not diminish. Objects may be different. The objects may manifest, reflect more or less. But God himself is self-revealed. The consciousness or the reality is supreme. It does not change. The change happens only in Prakriti, not in the Purusha. He manifests himself as everything, no doubt, good and bad, as glory, as brilliance, as the splendor that we see, as beauty, as power. So many attributes are there. We can use that for meditation and say that he is expressing himself. Oh, how beautifully he is expressing. That is why when we see glorious things, when you go to the Himalayas, for a moment at least we think, oh, we have come to a divine place. Oh, what a wonderful. That sense of wonder that we have is induced by the expression of the consciousness of the Lord, the glory of the Lord. So, if Himalayas can induce us a sense of wonder, then how much more greater the Lord must be. There is a wonderful incident in the life of Swami Ramakrishna. All the direct disciples, everybody, any spiritual person would like to go to the Himalayas. That's why most of our monasteries and most of the thinking, Vedic thinking, was done in either on the bank or on the in the Himalayan region, where natural beauty, the glory of natural beauty can be seen, or on the banks of vast rivers, or on the top of the hill, or a forest, quiet forest, where there is pure and pristine nature. That is where the human mind conceives of the glory of the Lord. If you are too busy with money and all the petty things, quarrels and all those things, one cannot spiritually evolve. That is why sometimes it is good to go to solitude. If not solitude, at least go to a place which reflects the glory of the Lord more than other things. Glory of the Lord is there even in evil people, but for that reason we should not go to them. Because we have to go to a place where the real glory of the Lord is reflected more. That is the purpose of satsang. So also in the objects around us, you can experience the glory on the top of a hill. But if you go to Himalayas, your experience is different. You understand the glory in a totally different way. So as the brilliance, the splendor, the beauty, power, and the many divine attributes, the Lord is expressing himself more or less, just as the same sun is reflecting more in some objects, less in some objects. So you just first reflect on, before you reflect on the sun itself, the consciousness itself, try to meditate on the objects which are reflecting more of that consciousness. When you say satsang, you go to a person who is reflecting more of that consciousness because of his sadhana. So whatever catches our imagination when we try to superimpose that glory on the Himalayas or the wonderful things of nature. But that is not the final goal. As I told you, Swami Ramakrishna Anandji was so devoted. He wanted to realize the reality behind his guru, the sadhana that was given, the sadhana that was explained to him. But at the same time, the other brother disciples were very keen to visit the Himalayas and all those places of pilgrimage. So he was asked one day, why are you restricting yourself to the service of Sri Ramakrishna, your Ishta or your Guru, and always limiting yourself to one place? Don't you feel like going to see the beautiful glory of the Lord? He says, no, I'm not happy with that glory. After all, what are the Himalayas? The language that he used was very strange. It may appear strange to many of us. He said, after all, what is there in the Himalayas? It's just a piling of several rocks and stones. No doubt it is wonderful to look at, but will it explain the glory of the Lord in total? I want to know the full glory of the Lord, which I know I can achieve or I can realize by doing my sadhana. I don't have to get inspired by seeing this external glory of the Lord. I have known enough of that external glory. Now am keen to realize that glory which the Lord says is internal. The internal glory is far, far superior than the external glory. That is the idea. So he is expressing himself in different ways through the creation, but he himself, the sun, we have to seek the sun, not his glory. We may begin our journey when we see many bright things, then we appreciate, try to find out, oh, what is illuminating these wonderful things around us. Then when we understand that the sun is responsible for all the bright things that we see, then we focus on the sun. So whatever catches our imagination in this world, it draws our attention, and then we try to understand the real truth behind it. So that glory of the Lord is to be used to inspire us. The glories that we see around us, it should inspire us to seek higher and higher glories. The real glory, to seek the sun itself, not the reflections. We should not be happy with reflections. That is what Swami Ramakrishna ji said, that I want to see the source of that consciousness. I don't want just to be happy with some of the glories of the Lord. I want to see his glory in its fullness. So Sri Ramakrishna again gives a beautiful example explaining the significance of this verse. He says, do you know what is meant by Brahman and his divine attributes? Now this is a question he's asking on behalf of all of us and trying to answer it. He says there is one Brahman, the infinite glory, like one sun, and there are his attributes. So he says it is like a vast expanse of water. There is a big water body, like a big ocean. There are waves, there are ripples, there are billows, bubbles, sprays, froth, and all so on that water body. Forms appear in Chitakasha. Now, this is not just an external form. You see, Sri Ramakrishna is explaining. Chit Akasha means the mental space. We see things in the outer space. We see outer glory. But we don't realize it is the expansion or the expression of the mind only. It is only when the mind expresses itself, it can see the glory outside. So forms appearing in this Chit Akasha, the mental space, or the expanse of consciousness can be experienced. And even the incarnations of God come within this category. I mean, they are at the most the highest manifestation of that consciousness. Compared to jivas, compared to lesser human beings, they may show more expansion of consciousness. But all the same, they are forms which appear in the universal Chitakasha. The universe of consciousness is solidified, as it were, in certain places. Sometimes it is very gross, like the gross inanimate universe. Sometimes it is subtle, sometimes it can be so glorious that one can consider that being or that human being to be an incarnation of God. They come within that category. So they may be very big waves, as Swamiji said in his famous talks on Vedanta. He says Vedanta doesn't need need the idea of these incarnations and great prophets. They say, after all, it is the ocean that we are seeking. There may be big waves. We may be very, very small waves. But behind us is that infinite form, the infinite formless God, not form, infinite formless God, the great ocean, of which these big and small waves are just manifestations. So for people who want to reach the highest realization of that consciousness, they feel that the supports that we take, the vibhutis that we meditate upon, the Lord that we meditate upon, the form that we meditate upon, is ultimately to take us. That is what Sri Krishna is telling here. I'm just giving you a partial glimpse of my glory, but my real glory is beyond all these things. That is what we should aim at. All our worship, all our puja, all our effort, spiritual sadhana that we do is to touch that formless using the form, using these glories, using each one of these chapters. It's taking us a step further towards realizing that goal. That goal can be realized only if you continue. Just the journey has to continue. There are 18 chapters, in fact. Each one of them is a yoga. Each one of them is a path which one can easily use. There are other paths inside these chapters also. It's not that each chapter teaches only one path. There's several verses explaining several ways of trying to reach the goal of life. So, the sum total, is it to be inferred then? The question is answered in the next verse. That the sum total of the manifested universe and the God are one and the same. The Lord clarifies this. He tries to clarify it, saying, Atva bahuna etena kim gyatena tavarjunaha Vishtabhya aham idam kritsnam ekanshena sthito jagat. So to avoid confusion, he says, but what need is there, Arjuna, for this detailed knowledge? I gave you some samples, some examples, but you don't have to bother. Try to find out the greatness behind every created being. This is just to divert your mind from getting stuck at the lower levels. I just showed the glories so that you can go beyond the glories. Because, he says, the reason is, I stand supporting, I means the Brahman, supporting the whole universe with a single fragment of myself. So, that is why what he says, Athava, or by many, this means these glories are known. You know for certain that I am supporting, Vishtabhya, supporting, Aham, Idam, this, Kritsnam, all, by one part of my glory. It's just one part I am supporting this whole universe. So you can imagine what is my total glory. Single fragment of myself is enough to fascinate you, to express these glories. And you get, influenced by this, thinking that this is the all the glory of the Lord. This is the entire glory. No, he says, I'm just one part of one ekanshena, just as fragment of myself you have seen now. And you should not be carried away by this single fragment of glory that I am explaining now. So, The 10th chapter can be used to go higher. And Sri Krishna explains here, just as an expert cannot display all his talents when tied into a gunny bag, suppose there is an expert athlete. You tie him, or maybe you tie his feet, or do something which restricts his capacity to perform fully, or may you make him starve. So he says he cannot display all his talents. He will just express part of his glory, what he is capable of. Similarly, the Lord reveals, and he says that I am showing you all these wonderful forms, vibhutis, but they are partial. I am far more superior. So this is to encourage the sadhaka that don't stop. You might have got, some people were very happy when they get some visions. Then they come, oh, I got this vision. But that is not what the Lord is, the sadhana is all about. You have to understand Lord in totality. That is when the spiritual practices start. Some people have very limited ideas of what they want to attain in life. They have to be expanded. They have to be we have to go further than that. So if we just are fascinated by the big waves, then we'll never understand what that ocean is. They are all limitations. So Lord is just warning Arjuna that don't be carried away by my greatness. It's just part of my glory. I showed you, but don't just stop at this. So these waves are mere insignificant aspects of that vast ocean. You have to understand the ocean. You have to reach the ocean. So all these infinite phenomenal expressions, the phenomenal means expressions of Prakriti, of Ishvara, are nothing but a negligible speck in his great glory and magnitude of the greatness. So when that itself cannot be understood through the mind, then how can you express the total glory of the Lord through the mind? So that is why Sri Ramakrishna in the Gospel says, God is with form and is without form. And again he is transcending all this. He alone knows who and what he is. I refer to a verse from the Rig Veda, Kasmai Devaya Havisha Videma. Even the rituals, when they did these rituals, they worshipped Agni, they thought Agni is Lord, and they thought we are offering this ghee and other things in the Havana that we do. Many of us perform rituals. But do we understand the significance? At least the Vedic sage was very honest. He said, Kasmai Devaya Havisha Vidhema. I am offering it, but oh Lord, forgive me, I don't know whom this offering will reach. Who is that person? I don't know. At least he was honest to admit. He didn't say, this is addressed to Indra. That is what most of us do. Somebody was asking the other day, what are these, you can say this, young, lesser deities. Sri Krishna referred to them. They are known as lesser deities, or, demigods. There is one God, the Supreme, and there are demigods. These demigods are like the glories. So Agni is the demigod whom we worship for certain fruits. Indra is there, we worship. Even in Hinduism, there are millions and millions of gods. We worship Shani, we worship Rahu. If you go to astrologers, they won't say pray to God, all your problems will be solved. They'll say, no, this is a typical Shani problem. So Shani is one demigod. Rahu is one demigod, and there are so many Jupiter and all these planets. So Swamiji was disgusted. He said, what is all this stupid nonsense? We worship, of course, people do it because they want lesser things. They want the lesser knowledge of what God is. They are happy if Shani solves their problem. If something is obstructing, they are perhaps not able to make money, so they just pray out, it's a Shani Dasha. Somebody will say that you worship this God, offer him some oil and lamp and other rituals you do, and you'll see all the obstacles will go away and you'll earn money, because they earn more money. So for them, that acquisition of wealth is the only goal. And they are happy with these demigods. Whether we should worship Sri Krishna says even that Ishvara's form only, but know those forms to be limited. That is what he is now telling. Okay, I have given you a small glimpse. These demigods, these forces of nature, these Himalayas, even the biggest of waves is after all a wave. It's not the ocean. Wave can never become the ocean. So, how can a wave become an ocean? Wave is a wave. It may be a big wave. That's why, from the point of view of Advaita or point of view of the formless people who worship the formless God, they say God with form, okay. But Sri Ramakrishna says God is not just without form or with form. He is beyond that. What he is only he can explain. That is a more correct way of telling. The same Vedic idea of Kasmai Devaya Havisha Videma. Am I worshipping this? Which God am I worshipping by offering? He said, I don't know, but I'm doing it because my forefathers have taught me. And he has at least the faith. He has the humility to say that I don't know. I don't know whom I am worshipping. That is one of the important verses of. That's why we say that the Vedas teach different levels of truth. But at every level, they are very honest. They won't say, I know who God is. They won't assert. They are not fanatical. They're not dogmatic. This alone is God. That is not God. They say, no, we don't know. We are doing it. We are still learning. It's a seeking that is going on in our minds. We are seeking that same God. Some people are seeking by prayer. Some people are seeking Him by appreciating the glory of the Lord. Sri Krishna gives us so many options. If you want to meditate on the glory, well, begin with that, but do something and don't stop. As Sri Ramakrishna said, one should never stop. One has to continuously move forward. Charai veti, charai veti. So we come to the last verse now. It is over. And Sri Ramakrishna's gospel, he says, God is with form, without form, and also he transcends all these. So you can't say God is with form. It is like saying the ocean is this big wave. So God is with form. Oh, then he is not form. Then that ocean is without form. It is the flat ocean without any waves. No, that is also not the ocean, because many times the ocean takes form. So you can't say it is not the ocean, nor can you say the ocean is without form. He is something which is much beyond this. So we come to the end of this chapter, Dashamodhyaya iti Srimad Bhagavad Gita Su. In this Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Upanishatsu. So every verse, every chapter is an Upanishad. Brahma Vidyayam. In this Upanishad of the Bhagavad Gita. So this is an Upanishad, the essence of the Upanishad. The knowledge of Brahman, the supreme science of yoga. Yoga Shastre. Shastra means the science of yoga. Brahma Vidyayam, the science of yoga, the knowledge, the supreme knowledge of Brahman. Brahma Vidya means the knowledge of the supreme. But this Gita is not only an Upanishad. This 12th iti means this whole chapter. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Su Upanishadsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Sri Krishna Arjuna Samvade Vibhuti Yoga Namaha Dashamodhyaya. So we end the chapter here saying the science of yoga, which is again Sri Krishna Arjuna Samvade. Everywhere there is a dialogue. Every of these, one of the chapters is a dialogue. It will end with this only. It's a dialogue between Sri Krishna and Arjuna. So this 10th discourse or the 10th chapter is designated as Vibhuti Yoga. Vibhuti Yogo Nama Dashamodhyaya. So the yoga of Vibhutis or yoga of the divine manifestations of the Lord. Just as we had different yogas, now we'll come to another chapter which will not be known as Vishwarupa Darshana Yoga. That will start in the next class. If there are a few questions, we have 3 minutes. I don't know. You can just type them in the chat, or you can even ask, because I have enabled this audio. You can unmute yourself now. Yeah. If there are questions, you can quickly ask, otherwise I'll conclude. Yeah. In the chat, there is one question. I'll try to answer this. Oh no, it's just a thank you. Yeah, so we'll conclude. We have just 2 minutes. In case you want to ask, you can just type the question. Still there are 1 or 2 minutes. Yeah. Can one of the glories become sadhana, and can they lead to the full glory? Yes, yes. That is what we do. When you call Ishta Devata, you are meditating on one aspect of the Lord. What is an Ishta? What is an Avatara? It is the same formless represented by a form. So, there are 18 chapters. There are so many aspects of the Lord. Anyone, if you pursue with sincerity, will lead to the realization of the Supreme. That is why so many yogas are there. That's the precise reason why so many yogas are described. There are so many yogas only because of this. So, we have these different aspects of the Lord only because meditating on one or more of these aspects, we can realize the total glory of the Lord. That is why these chapters are there. So one or more, as Swami Vivekananda says, there are 4 yogas broadly. Here there are 18 yogas, there are 4 yogas. Through one or more or all of them, you can realize the Supreme. That is the idea. So yes, you can definitely realize by meditating on one of the aspects and going deep. So you start, all these avatars are different doorways to realize the same universal consciousness, the formless God that you aspire to realize and become one with. The way through it is through the form only. So it is through the form that you reach the formless, and all the glories or all these vibhutis and all the sadhanas, all the paths, as Sri Ramakrishna beautifully put it, Jato mat tato path. There are as many ways as there are opinions. So these are different opinions. You can, these are different ways or paths to reach the same Supreme Divine. So I'll conclude now. We will conclude. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.
Thank you, Maharaj. Good evening, Maharaj.
Thank you. Good evening. Yeah.